I draw on a poll quite a lot, right, from Statista, and it's all about cannabis and recreational drug use. But it's for cannabis, sorry, not recreational, soft drug use. But I believe it's more for cannabis, but labeled that to confuse the issue, because the lead question is actually, what do you think about soft drugs like cannabis? And it's like, okay, so that's the first thing you're putting in people's heads. That, to me, is like cannabis. Like, it's about cannabis. So with the CMC poll, right, do you know, I think this is the exact wording for question one. Do you know that CBD is derived from the marijuana plant? And it's like, hold on. In fact, rewind my selector, 2004. Like, marijuana plant. Is marijuana plant the same definition as skunk? Or is it just when it's got over 0.2% THC in? That's something worth checking. But, certainly it's...
Marijuana, as far... It doesn't have a defined connotation under any act or statute that I have ever found in the UK. But it obviously carries over a certain connotation of a certain class. Whenever you hear somebody saying that, whether they recognize it or not, they are deliberately trying to create a separation and put in a classist inflection in what they are saying. And as you say, like, putting even just going, soft drugs like cannabis, and saying, instead of going, how do you feel about cannabis? Because then that person's going to go, well, actually, I think cannabis is amazing, should do all this, but soft drugs, what are other soft drugs? Mushrooms, I've never tried them, I'm scared of them, so, this is, what if that's and they get lost in all of the other mire instead of actually, as you say, there was a poll not recent in the fucking mainstream politics zeitgeist that was in the Telegraph or something, and no one knows who the fuck paid for it. And it was so cherry-picked, and the questions were so meandered that it was done so that the right-wing press could post a headline basically going, like Tory revolt or whatever it fucking was. They're like, oh, no, it wasn't. It was to show that there was more support for any other Tory leader than Keir Starmer. So if Rishi was to be replaced, his replacement would win the next election. And it was through gerrymandering fucking questioning. And it's the same mechanism, and it's done purely to start that conversation. So then people on social media share the headline rather than looking at the story and being analytical and thinking, well, how does this fit with all the other information I know?
Do you do those YouGov polls that come through on Google?
Yeah,
I would suggest just having him come through, because it gives you an interesting picture of what's happening or what the main thoughts are in those who are in the political landscape, right? Because, I mean, it does. There are polls that will come up and you'll feel like, well, you're giving me free answers there, but actually none of them actually reflect what I feel my answer should be. They are guided, certainly. And you can see really that.
Oh, dude, this is a resource for podcasting. It's just there's loads of articles being like, so the majority of Brits think this. I can be like, we talk about this. We've got this. We're talking about this.
I tell you what, as well, when you go through it, right, you can sometimes come up with a question where you're allowed to leave your opinion, right?
Oh, I've got a few of them.
Yeah, but then I noticed. But straight after that, you then have the option to grade other people's opinions and look through what the general state of play is. And sometimes those people who don't have a chance to answer a question in the way that they want to answer it, they do get vocal. And of course, if it's, topics like the Horizon scandal with the post office, I mean, that is disgusting. And certainly you will see people voice their opinions on that one.
What the fuck is it? Sorry. I'm looking at the website. I've just typed in cannabis. I was looking at the first one going, this is interesting. Like, someone's put a poll basically together of like, would you likely to try cannabis if infused in a drink and legally available? And like the majority of people, 46%, not at all. Cumulatively between like not very, somewhat likely, and not very likely is 46. and then the rest don't know. But then on the page, when you land on it, there is this thing here. I'm going to share it just to show people to actually laugh at the state of this question. Where's my share screen? It's that one. Come here. That one. Share. Do we share? Yeah, this here. How addictive is cannabis? And you see 2 bars and you go, oh, I bet one bar is addictive and the other is not addictive. And then you read what they are. Fairly addictive or very addictive.
Yeah.
How fucking loaded. Oh, wait, here we go. Oh, thank fuck for that. Yeah, we clicked on it and there are other options. I thought that was literally a data set of just that. But that's interesting. Look at...
Wow.
That many people think that it's addictive.
Okay, so most people not addictive at all. Fairly addictive.
Fairly addictive. Very addictive is on the rise this year.
Oh, not the addictive of all is on the bottom. Now, why would that be? Now, let's have a little look at what's going on around the world. We're getting mentions of tainted weed, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some serious issues. I mean, they've kind of debunked. Actually, shout out to Weed World. I can't remember which one of the reporters, but there is in the latest issue of Weed World, somebody is debunking the fentanyl cannabis-laced myth over in the States. There was something in the UK that concerned me quite recently, and given, I guess, our contentious interpersonal history, maybe, I'm a bit reticent to mention, but there was a video put out by the UK CSC a few days ago where founder Greg DeHoe, I don't know if it was his voiceover, I don't know if it was his fingers, but somebody was thumbing a bud and there was grip bits sort of coming off and they were talking about it. And the last sentence of it was, this has already caused a seizure and the woman who had a seizure, is allergic to opioids.
That's
and then the video cuts off and it just, even then it's just taking my breath away again there. And to think of like, I'm not given everything that's fucking happened, I'm not accusing Greg of propaganda or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But I think it's a very careless phrasing. It feels very loaded. And we have some contaminated batch issues across the country. That is a true thing. I literally went into 2 hydro shops 2 days ago now, one of which has been a long-term supporter of sort of Durham's work, like the club events and everything else, someone that I have a very good working and personal relationship with. And he was reiterating this sort of narrative that we're seeing in the UK, that the Albanians are leaving in droves. The Albanian minister, I can't remember which ministry it is.
Hold on, does that mean that means there's going to be a nationwide shortage of Stardog?
Drought is already happening in some places. There's quite a few lads that I'd heard from other people that I speak to down south that said they were up here. When I've spoken to, like I said, easily the largest hydro distributor in the northeast, it's like, nah man, they're further up. So some of the lads are heading up to Scotland, and Scotland's always had like a glut problem because there's only 2 really tiny roadways in and out of Scotland on the east and west coast. But if there's then production sort of moving there, it would make sense. Rents are becoming a massive problem, so people are trying to get further and further. The Albanian big growers are trying to get further and further away. But one of the ministers, they're potentially offering like I think it was up to €1 million. They were saying that you can bring up to €1 million into the country. We're not going to ask questions. However you made your money over there, if you want to come back to Albania now, you can have this money and we're not going to investigate you. Bear in mind, about 6 months ago, Albania quietly announced their intention to, so many legal air quotes legalize medical.
Is that only for nationals? I mean, could you want to move down here? We'll set up a grow, see how it goes. We'll talk to Alison Hernandez. We'll get it eased. Like, and then basically just like, emigrate over there. $1 million, ask no questions. Why have I got a Welsh Janner accent? I didn't know this was only a national thing.
It's basically that they're suffering the same issue that the majority of countries are suffering now, is like a sex crisis, a collapse in birth rates. And Albania is only 2.2 million, if that strong, and Albania nationals are statistically disproportionately involved in drug trade in mainland Europe at least, if not in other areas. I mean, there are various stories. Vice have done some good coverage historically of sort of how the Albanians are cutting out or circumnavigating some of the traditional cartel routes and are actually shipping shit straight into Europe, into Albania, and through Baltic regions and up and distributing. Obviously, they've been highly involved in cocaine for quite a long time. But to kind of bring that back to our earlier point before, a lot of the product that we were seeing there wasn't tainted with pharmaceuticals. It wasn't anything kind of done to it as far as that I could see. It was just grown with things that you wouldn't want ideally your fucking flower to be grown with elements and things that are designed and produced for ornamental flower production. Not for foods, not for consumption. These are not combustibles. These are not consumables. And even if they are consumable graded, that's for the stomach acid in your belly, which can dissolve steel. So remember that it's not for volatilization when you set the fucker on fire. The speculation does seem to be that these tainted products, there is some sort of salt, that it is a great sort of sodium. It's something in terms of the way that it is behaving. We've seen historically sugar, glass, sand. Obviously, sugar breaks down, caramelizes. You can see that. You can understand that quite easily. The glass, quite often, depending on your roach size and kind of how you smoke, you feel it through when you pull. You can get quite a sharpness, and it can tear and actually be quite an unpleasant experience. I mean, we saw fiberglass tainted cannabis in Durham about 10 years ago, and that was just from an enormous grow that was dried in like an attic space, exposed to all the fiberglass, and a fan just blowing it onto the fucking weed. But there does seem to be something, I can't tell the scale of it, but it does seem to be popping up in Ireland, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, across the UK. And like I said, if it then seems to be this narrative that a lot of Albanian nationals are leaving, they dominated the market for so many years that a lot of the hobbyists and the kind of local nationals back down because they wanted a higher return. Whereas the Albanian guys were often, allegedly trafficking people, younger people, and they were exploiting labor. They weren't paying rents on certain facilities. They weren't paying electricity, etc. So the margins could be a lot lower. And obviously they turned up in various marketplaces and were dropping boxes hundreds upon hundreds of pounds cheaper. And the larger producers couldn't keep up. So it is evolving quite quickly down on the ground level, but it does seem that we are going to end up with a point of a drought. So if anybody is thinking about it, now is probably a time to chuck a tent together and get yourself sorted, because prices are going to go fucking silly. Cannabis has already bucked the trend against inflation for quite a few years, but with everything else going up, nutrients are going to go up again this April with price costings, which will add something to it. Electricity, that's going to get very unstable potentially, given what I'm reading here, which says most Brits, see, I'm tying it back in, this is genius. Most Brits think that World War III is likely in the next 5 to 10 years.